I didn't anticipate making this statement. The cruise ban may last longer for kids than older at-risk adult passengers. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Cruise News Show. I'm your host Tony here with the latest cruise news updates. Well, I got three meaty cruise news stories for you today. Let me tell you about the lineup. First, we're going to talk sadly about another cruise line bankruptcy. Then we're going to move over to New Zealand and talk about the challenges that a cruise line is having getting restarted there. Then we're going to move over and talk about, well, there's actually breaking cruise news. Two cruise lines have announced that they will be requiring vaccines before you can cruise, and then this might have some ramifications on cruising with the kiddies. Let's talk cruise line bankruptcy. I've mentioned it before. When we say cruise line, it's a large umbrella. I don't even know if this company I'm going to talk about qualifies as a cruise line the way that we think of it, but that's the way the media likes to spin it. And we are talking about a company that had a ship that's no longer going to be in business. This time we're talking about the cruise company Sail Windjammer, a fleet of one, and it's an old ship, an old three-mast schooner built in 1923 called the Mandalay. It's like a pirate ship or something like that. Primarily doing cruises in the Southern Caribbean, the Grenadines. This is a ship that would accommodate 72 passengers. They haven't had a sailing for the last 10 months. They have been shut down during the pandemic. But to add insult to injury, the ship was damaged months ago, and the cost of no sailing and the potential cost of the repair, the company is out of money. They are shutting down. At this point, I can't figure out where this company was incorporated. I'm assuming they're not incorporated in the United States. In a statement on their website, they mentioned that they have been unable to receive any small business loans during this period. So it makes me wonder if they didn't qualify for any of the relief that happened in the United States because they were not incorporated in the United States. It could be for a different reason. The end result is that we have another company, another cruise company, another company that would hire out a ship to take passengers on the high seas going under. Sail Windjammer no more, and uncertain is the fate of the damaged three-mast schooner, the Mandalay. Now in drama on the high seas news, let's talk about what's going on with Ponant Cruising and the cruise restart in New Zealand. I covered it, I feel like a couple months ago, that New Zealand gave approval for Ponant to do chartered cruises out of New Zealand, and their first charter cruise is set to start on February the 8th, 2021. That's right, just 6 days from now. In preparation for that sailing, Ponant loaded up its cruise ship, the La Perouse, in Jakarta with crew members and made the journey across the sea to New Zealand. And as they approached New Zealand looking for their berth, looking for their place to dock, they were informed by the New Zealand government that they would not be allowed to dock based on the visa status of its crew members. The La Perouse traveling with 90 crew members, and here is the rub. The New Zealand government only had approved the visas for 29 of the 90 crew members on board. That means 61 of those crew members had been denied a visa for entry into New Zealand. It's now become a little bit of a he said, she said. Ponant feeling like they were good to go when they started to set sail for New Zealand, and the New Zealand authorities pushing back on Ponant, saying we clearly approved some visas and denied others. That should have been a clue. There's also a debate going on about what's an essential worker and what is a non-essential worker. The 61 visas that were denied were determined by the New Zealand government to be non-essential for the operation of the crew. Ponant's contention is that all 90 crew members were essential. New Zealand would like to see those 61 roles that they deem to be non-essential filled with New Zealand workers. And this is a challenge. Ponant's like, how are we going to get workers on board and trained in time to do our first cruise? And so there are a few people left in the lurch on this deal. Of course, the 61 crew members that aren't approved to be there, you got to figure out what to do with them. And then you've got the small ship company Wild Earth Travel that commissioned, that chartered the La Perouse. They're waiting with New Zealand passengers. They're waiting with people that are ready to go on a cruise on February the 8th out of Auckland. It's all still up in the air. I do think it's fair to mention at this point, one of the places that have handled the virus better than anywhere else in the world, New Zealand. And so I respect the fact that they're holding strong to what they believe is going to keep their population safe. It's definitely a challenge right now as Ponant desperately seeks people to come work on that cruise ship from New Zealand. The last I read is they're off the coast of New Caledonia. They're running out of fuel. So they're trying to figure it all out before they start cruising in just a few days. Could we call it a little bit of a rocky beginning for the cruise restart in New Zealand? It could be indicative of how bumpy the road is as other places try to restart cruising. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. So will kids be able to cruise in the short term? We got to talk about that. But first, let me take a second to invite you to be a part of this virtual cruising community. If you love staying up to date on what's going on in that cruise life, if you like to stay up to date with the cruise news, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on right here to Lido Loca. That way you don't miss out on any of the episodes. Thanks in advance. So in thinking about the cruise restart, I've often thought about which people may be excluded. We know that this virus has been particularly troubling for the most elderly, for people with pre-existing medical conditions, for the obese. Will these people be excluded from cruising? Will you need a doctor's note to be allowed to cruise? We've had that conversation. Never once did I contemplate that it would be kids that would be excluded, kids that wouldn't be allowed to cruise when cruising restarts, but that could be the case. The breaking cruise news today is that 2 American cruise companies will be requiring a vaccine for all crew members and all cruise passengers before they can cruise. This kicks in July the 1st for the American Steamboat Company and for Victory Cruise Lines. These are the first 2 American companies to come out and say that a vaccine will be required. They joined the UK company Saga Cruises, who announced last month that they would require vaccines for passengers, not necessarily for their crew members. And it wasn't a big deal for Saga. It's a cruise line where you had to be 50 years old or older to cruise, so the kid question did not come into play. Well, that age requirement is not there for the American Steamboat Company for Victory Cruise Lines. And so this is significant. It's here in the United States. There will be a vaccine requirement on these 2 brands. So here's the dilemma. The COVID vaccines, they're only available right now if you're 16 or older. If cruise lines are requiring the vaccine to cruise, well, what does that mean for kids? What does that mean for families with kids? That's an answer that cruise lines will have to wrestle with, and it's got huge ramifications for family-friendly cruise lines. Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Norwegian Cruise Line, MSC, Disney Cruise Line. This is a question these cruise lines will have to answer. I think a couple things could happen. I think there could be a kid exemption. While it certainly has not been zero, the number of children who suffer with the COVID disease, get sick from COVID, die from COVID, very minimal. Kids are easily one of the least risk group when it comes to the sickness part of this pandemic. And so cruise lines could just do a blanket exemption for children under 16, children who cannot get the vaccine. I would say that's the preferred approach because cruise lines certainly don't want to do away with their family business. But on the other hand, what if governments say that a condition of international travel is proof of vaccination? A decision like that from the government may take the decision out of the hands of the cruise company, and you would end up with cruising with no kids. And in reality, this question isn't just going to be limited to cruise lines. Many of the airlines, they say that they will be requiring a vaccine from their passengers. It's going to be huge on a lot of fronts. Will employers be able to mandate vaccines? Will there be mandates for international travel? A lot of people see vaccination as the way that this pandemic ends, but how will it play out? What happens when kids are involved? many more interesting conversations to come. And it leads to the question for the comments. Do you think what Saga's doing, America Steamboat Company, Victory Cruise Lines, is this the beginning steps down a path to a vaccine mandate for cruising? And if so, what does that mean for the kids? Do you think kids will be excluded from cruising? If so, would that knock you and your family out of cruising as a vacation? Or do you not cruise with kids and that would be okay? Leave a comment below. Thanks so much for watching the show today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please show your support by hitting the like button. This is Tony with Lido Loca. And until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.